She was wearing the uniform, showed her identification, and followed all the rules. So why did two officers still handcuff her? The answer cost them everything. There was nothing unusual about that stretch of road on the outskirts of Tucson, Arizona. It was early, just after 7:30, and the chill in the air had not yet dissipated. Sergeant Elena Ramirez had driven that road hundreds of times before. She knew every curve, every pothole, every crooked sign that led out of her neighborhood to the highway. His 2014 dark green Toyota RAV4 was almost out of gas. He hadn't had breakfast yet, so he thought about grabbing something small at the station before continuing to the reserve base at Davis-Monzan. Training weekend. He didn't love it, nor did he hate it. It was part of her life, her rhythm. He stopped at the Sinclair station on Nogales Avenue, located just behind a strip of closed businesses and a Dollar General. It wasn't exactly the best part of town, but it was far from the worst. Elena was in uniform with her well-pressed camouflage suit and tightly tied boots. She wore her badge with her name and rank proudly on her chest. His canvas bag was upright in the back seat, packed the night before with his field gear. He looked at it as he left, feeling that same pull of discipline that he had maintained for the past 12 years. The Army Reserve wasn't his whole life, but it kept him grounded. As she slid her card into the pump and selected regular gasoline, her phone vibrated. A message from her mother asking how she was. Elena always smiled before a workout. She murmured something, wrote a quick response, then opened a protein bar and took a bite while the tank filled up. He didn't notice the white girl who stopped, 2 pumps down, not immediately. Inside the subway, there were 2 uniformed police officers from a nearby suburb. One younger, tall, with a shaved head. The other, older one, more burly and silent behind mirrored sunglasses. The younger one pointed towards Elena. He said something that made the older man shrug. Elena was putting away the mouthpiece when the first voice called her. "Excuse me, ma'am." She turned around. "Yes, officer. Would you mind stepping away from the vehicle?" She blinked, confused. Is there a problem?" "Can you do it now?" he exclaimed. There was something in his tone, not just authority, but suspicion. It made her stomach tighten, but she stepped back with her hands visible. The senior officer stepped out and stood aside without saying anything. The younger one approached directly. "Do you have identification?" "Of course," said Elena, slowly reaching into the pocket of her uniform. "I'm heading to the base. I am in the Army Reserves." He held his military ID with one hand and his driver's license with the other. The officer glanced at them out of the corner of his eye, barely seeing them. "This uniform is not a costume," she added quietly, without moving. "Who said it was?" he replied. "We received a call about someone loitering and acting suspiciously. We're just doing our job." Elena said nothing. Her eyes moved towards the chief officer. He still hadn't spoken. He was just watching. "Are you sure this ID is legitimate?" asked the young man. "Excuse me, did you hear me?" She exhaled slowly. "Do you think I'm pretending to be military?" He didn't answer. Instead, he took a step closer. "Turn around." Elena blinked. "He's stopping me." He raised his voice. "Ma'am, I am giving you a legal order. Turn around. Hands behind your back." She looked at the senior officer again, hoping for reasoning, but he nodded once, not with sympathy, just to signal obedience. Her fists clenched before she turned around. "This is a mistake," he said, "and it's going to cost them." His hands were pulled back. The handcuffs clicked tight, too tight. He grimaced, but he didn't give him the satisfaction of a reaction. Someone from the other side of the parking lot shouted, "Hey, what are you doing?" "She's a soldier." The young officer turned his head annoyed. "Step back." But Elena wasn't thinking about the growing crowd or the eyes on her uniform. Her mind was already on the call she was about to make from the patrol car. The back seat of the patrol car smelled of old vinyl and sweat. The door closed behind her with a definitive coldness that made her sit up straight. With her wrists still handcuffed behind her, her breathing was steady, but her jaw was clenched. His badge was half twisted from the way they had grabbed it. He looked out the window, watching as the younger officer strutted around his vehicle, as if he had just solved a case. The major stood near the patrol, arms crossed, eyes scanning the gas station as if he were bored with the whole affair. Elena spoke loudly enough to be heard through the small opening in the plexiglass barrier. "I want to call my commanding officer." The youngest didn't turn around. "He will have his phone call at the station." "That's not how this works," she replied, firmly. "This uniform gives me the right to contact my base immediately when I'm detained." Finally, she turned around. "She is being held on suspicion of impersonating military personnel. That's a federal offense. Stay still." Elena did not flinch. "I'm not going to sit here while you pretend this isn't racial discrimination." He smiled, smugly. "No one said anything about race, ma'am. We received a call. We responded." She leaned forward, looked at my ID, saw my license. "My plates are in the window. He ignored all that and handcuffed me anyway." "Why?" He looked at her for a moment, as if trying to decide whether to respond. Then he turned around and walked away. Outside, a small group had gathered near the sidewalk. 2 young people were filming with their phones. A woman in a medical uniform shouted something about knowing her rights. The air buzzed with tension of the kind that could be felt in the teeth. The chief officer got into the driver's seat, looked at her through the mirror. She should have stayed silent. Elena looked him directly in the eyes. "You should have done your job properly." He turned slightly, as much as the handcuffs allowed him. "Can I use my phone or not?" He hesitated, then murmured, "Make it quick." He extended his hand and dropped the phone into her lap. Without unlocking the handcuffs, she clumsily maneuvered it, twisting to touch the screen with the side of her thumb. 2 quick swipes. A number. It rang twice. Martinez. The voice was high-pitched. Alert. "Carlos, I am handcuffed in the back of a police car in Tucson. They say I'm impersonating a soldier. I showed identification. They don't care." There was a pause. "Who is the officer who arrested you?" "I don't know yet. They didn't show license plate numbers. 2 of them are Subit Blanco, Sinclair Station in Nogales. I'm 5 minutes away. I'm calling the command. Keep the line open." The call went silent, but she didn't hang up. The chief officer looked at her through the mirror again. "Who was that? Your lawyer?" She didn't answer. Outside, the younger officer walked back to the patrol car, now visibly agitated. "We're getting heat out here," he murmured to his partner. "Someone already posted a video. It's coming to Facebook. I said 5 minutes. Carlos's voice returned. "Can you hear me?" "I hear you." The young police officer leaned towards the window. "Who?" "Is Carlos your boyfriend?" Elena raised an eyebrow. "Try Colonel Carlos Martinez, logistics of the 3rd Battalion. He is about to learn his name very well." That impacted him differently. The policeman's jaw moved slightly. He stepped back, now unsure. The energy was shifting. More people were recording. A car honked as it passed by. The woman in the medical uniform shouted again, this time at the police officer. "She is military, idiots!" But the officers didn't move quickly enough, and the clock was ticking on whether this would end quietly or publicly. Colonel Carlos Martinez hadn't slept much the night before. That morning, he had been at his desk early, halfway through his first cup of black coffee, when his niece's call came in. He recognized the tone in her voice immediately. No fear, no panic, but control. Controlled anger, controlled humiliation. Carlos was not just a high-ranking officer. He was the kind of man who made things happen when others got stuck. Born in the trenches, hardened by years in deployments and bureaucratic politics, he had seen systems work and had seen them break people. He wasn't going to let them break Elena. He set the coffee aside, grabbed his car keys, and dialed on Bluetooth as he left the parking lot. Office. This is Colonel Carlos Martinez. I need to confirm the location of Officers Burke and Robinson. I believe they have detained a service member at a gas station on Nogales Avenue. There were doubts at the other end. Sir, typically I'm not asking for the usual. I am requesting verification of an incident involving one of my logistics officers in uniform, allegedly accused of impersonating military personnel. The line went silent. We will verify and inform you, sir. All right, you have 2 minutes. Carlos's next call was to a friend at the town hall. Check the traffic cameras and see if there's a patrol near the Sinclair and Nogales. I need confirmation now. Meanwhile, in the patrol car, Elena remained still. Her phone call wasn't over. The line was still open. I wanted them to know that someone was listening. Are you still with me? Carlos asked again, his voice calm but firm. I'm here, she said. The crowd is growing, people are filming. Stay where you are, don't move. Don't talk, let them bury themselves. Too late for that. He looked at the younger officer, who was now pacing back and forth. He took out his radio. Dispatch. We have a situation escalating. Civil interference. Requesting reinforcements. Elena chuckled softly. Reinforcements for what? A handcuffed woman? That comment did not go unnoticed. The youngest officer retorted. You need to watch your mouth, ma'am. Or what? Will he tighten the handcuffs more? The chief officer intervened from the front. She is not helping herself. I'm not here to help you feel better about what you've done, she replied. Carlos's voice returned strong. They are trying to cover themselves. Now I have 3 calls in progress, including one to public affairs. Videos coming in. It's already moving. And it was at that moment that someone had posted a 90-second clip on Twitter. It showed Elena being handcuffed in uniform while trying to explain herself. Her calm voice contrasted sharply with the officer's tone. It was already being retweeted by local journalists. Inside a newsroom in Tucson, a young editor named Marissa Lopez noticed it while looking for news. She clicked play, frowned, and then picked up the phone. Yes, we have something brewing near Nogales Avenue, a handcuffed female soldier in uniform. Do you want me to follow this up? I'll go get interviews. I'll check if he's still on site. Back at the gas station, more cars had entered, but no one was leaving. A woman in a red hoodie shouted, I have everything on my phone. She told them she was military. The youngest officer finally turned to the major. We were wrong. We should have properly verified their credentials. We can't backtrack now. Elena turned her head towards them. She still thinks I'm wearing this uniform for fun. The silence that followed was heavier than the handcuffs on his wrists. A new police sub came into the parking lot. A lieutenant stepped out, a middle-aged Latino man with a buzz cut and no expression. He didn't approach the crowd. He went directly to the patrol car. He knocked on the window. Sergeant Ramirez. She looked up surprised. Yes, I have been informed by Colonel Martinez and have reviewed the images in real time. We are correcting this now. He himself opened the door and carefully removed the handcuffs. On behalf of this department, I apologize. Elena didn't say anything immediately. She stood up slowly, rubbed her wrists, and looked directly at the 2 officers who had handcuffed her. I don't feel it, she said dryly. They were just caught. But the apology was not the end. It was the beginning of something much bigger, and Elena knew it. By the time Colonel Martinez arrived at the Sinclair station, the lieutenant had already cleared the scene. Elena was standing next to her raft, arms crossed, jaw tense. Her canvas bag remained in the back seat, untouched. The pumps had stopped, working a long time ago, but she hadn't moved. Carlos got out of his car, without saying a word. They made eye contact, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Then he gave a slight nod, not of approval, not of relief, but of acknowledgement. She had stood her ground. "Are you okay?" she asked in a low voice. She nodded. "Yes, I'm just angry." Good use. Across the street, a local reporter was setting up a microphone, trying to catch witnesses before they dispersed. One of the onlookers, the woman in the medical uniform, was already giving a detailed account, phone in hand. "They handcuffed her in uniform," she said into the microphone. "They didn't even ask questions. She had identification," she told them, "and yet they slammed her against her own car, as if she were lying." The previous video clip had reached over 60,000 views in 2 hours. By noon, it was at 180,000, and the comments were not subtle. "How does this keep happening?" "They saw a Latina in uniform and still didn't believe her. Fire them both." Carlos was already 2 steps ahead. He had emailed the city's police oversight office, attaching both the civilian footage and the body cam videos, acquired through alternative channels. He cited the base commander, the city attorney, and the local military liaison officer. The footage didn't lie. It showed Elena calmly stating her name, providing credentials, asking if she was being detained. The younger officer barely glanced at her identification before flipping it over, without warning, without confirmation. But worse yet, with a few seconds captured on the body camera after she was handcuffed, when the officers thought their audio was muted, the younger one had said, "Do you think she's one of those fake veterans? They've been doing that all year." The major chuckled to himself. Real or not, she had an attitude. "Let her cool off in the car." Carlos looked at the screen while the footage played. Then he said aloud without addressing anyone, "Idiots." That afternoon, the police department held a quiet internal meeting. The 2 officers, Burke and Robinson, were placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The public relations representative wanted to issue a statement immediately. The boss disagreed. "Too soon. Calm down. He won't." Someone responded, "No, this time." Meanwhile, back at the base, the news had already spread. Elena's fellow reservists were not surprised. The anger simmered beneath the surface, not loud but constant. A sergeant said to another, "I've been in for 15 years. They never handcuffed me in uniform. I wonder why that is." Elena didn't want to speak publicly. She ignored interview requests and blocked unknown numbers. He wasn't chasing headlines. He didn't need applause. He wanted accountability. Carlos called again that night. "Are you sure you don't want to make a statement?" She was sitting on her sofa, still in uniform. "No, the footage. Speak louder." He was silent for a moment, then said, "They're going to twist things, try to paint you as confrontational." She sighed. "Let them try." That night, one of the officers, Robinson, gave an unofficial comment to a local newspaper. He claimed that the incident had been exaggerated and said that Elena had escalated the situation by refusing to obey basic orders. By the next morning, it had backfired on him. More footage came out, longer angles, better audio. A retired Air Force major even commented in a live segment, "If that woman had been white, they wouldn't have approached those handcuffs." The department's silence only made things worse, but behind the scenes, decisions were being made that would change the course of both officers' careers in ways neither of them saw coming. By Friday morning, the footage had reached all the major media outlets in Arizona. It was no longer just a local incident. It was a headline that opened morning broadcasts and took over social media timelines. Army reservist unjustly detained. In uniform, body camera footage sparks outrage in Tucson. Woman in camouflage handcuffed in botched bomb scare. The Sinclair station, where it happened, had become a landmark overnight. News vans lined the street. The reporters were asking passers-by if they had seen anything, if they had heard about her, if they thought the officers had gone too far. Inside, a bakery down the street, people were arguing about coffee. She showed identification. That should have ended it. The police get calls like that all the time. Maybe they were just being cautious. You can't cautiously put someone in the back of A patrol car with handcuffs, not in uniform. At her house, the phones hadn't stopped ringing. Some calls were from reporters, some from strangers offering support, and a few unpleasant ones telling her she should have obeyed or accusing her of playing the race card. She let most go to voicemail, but read every message from fellow service members. One said, "I have served 22 years. I never imagined I would have to warn my daughter that even a uniform won't protect her." Another one said, "You did what many of us couldn't. You stood firm while remaining still." That one stayed with her. Meanwhile, the department hurried. The mayor called an emergency press conference. He stood rigidly next to the police chief and murmured through a prepared statement. "This city does not tolerate discrimination or misconduct of any kind. We have launched an internal review. We are in communication with military leadership and will address the matter with complete transparency." But transparency came late in the afternoon. The Office of Police Oversight published a preliminary review confirming that both officers had not followed standard identification verification procedures. More damning was their disregard for the protocol involving military personnel. It was clearly written in their procedures manuals that both officers had signed during training. Community. Groups protested in front of the town hall. Signs said, "Handcuffed for serving, uniform protection, justice for Sergeant Ramirez." Elena's name was now everywhere. Even though she hadn't spoken to a single reporter, she had become a symbol, not because she asked for it, but because people saw themselves in her. At a nearby high school, a teacher paused her government class and played the footage. "Look closely at this," she said. "Then tell me what you see." Not just what happened, but why it happened and why it keeps happening. Back at the station, the chief was under pressure. "We need to act," said his deputy. "We have all the local media breathing down our necks, plus 2 national networks looking to take it. Do we fire them now or after the review?" "Fire them yesterday," murmured the deputy. Inside a quiet meeting room, officers Burke and Robinson were brought in separately. Each was told the same thing. He is being placed on immediate suspension, without pay pending determination for violations of conduct, failure to follow identification protocol, and unprofessional conduct. Burke tried to argue, claiming that he feared she was a threat. "She was unarmed," replied the board member in uniform, "with identification, and you handcuffed her." Robinson did not argue, sat down, said nothing, and signed the form. When it was announced that the officers had been removed, reactions emerged. Some applauded, some said it was overdue. A small segment defended the officers, saying they did their job under pressure, but most saw it for what it was, a mistake that had finally found consequences. At a small gathering that night, the veterans lit candles outside the reserve base. They didn't sing, they didn't shout, they just stood there in silence. In support, one of them, an older man in faded camouflage clothes, held a sign that simply read, "We know what she stood for, do you?" But even with the responsibility beginning, the question hung in the air. What happens next for Elena? And what happens the next time it's someone else? Elena sat on the edge of her bed, hands folded in her lap. It had been almost a week since the gas station incident. She had taken a day off from training, just one. She didn't want people to look at her differently, treating her like a victim, like a symbol. She wasn't interested in being anyone's cause. She just wanted to regain his respect. His boots were lined up by the door, laces neatly tucked in. The uniform hanging from the coat rack looked the same as the one he had worn that morning, but everything felt heavier now. A letter slipped under her door around noon. Not an envelope, just a single folded sheet. She picked it up. "Sergeant Ramirez, on behalf of the Tucson Police Department, we extend a formal apology for the actions taken against you on the morning of March 12th. An internal review has confirmed multiple protocol violations by officers. Burke and Robinson, both of whom have since been terminated. This letter does not undo what happened, but it is the first step in our acknowledgement of the error. It wasn't signed by the boss, just printed with his name. That told her everything she needed to know. A few days later, she was invited to speak at a town hall meeting. They wanted a statement, just a few words. She politely declined. She owed them nothing. Instead, she drove to the Veterans Association in Rancho del Sol. Some older veterans had asked him to stop by. Nothing formal, just talk. Inside, a group of men and women, Latinos, whites, and African Americans, sat silently at folding tables, drinking black coffee and listening. Elena kept her voice steady. I didn't want this. I just wanted gas and a protein bar, but I couldn't ignore it either. Not because I was angry, but because I know there are kids watching, and I can't let them think that silence is the answer. Someone clapped slowly, then more joined in, but she raised her hand. I don't want applause. I want change. Back at City Hall, the change came quietly. The department issued new guidelines for dealing with service members, including mandatory identification verification steps and required retraining on racial bias. A new liaison position between the department and the nearest reserve base was created. Small steps, but they happened. One of the youngest officers at the precinct, Officer Torres, sent him a message through the link. I wasn't on duty that day, but I've watched the video 10 times. I'm sorry for how they treated you. I'm going to do better. Elena read it twice before forwarding it to Carlos. He responded with one word, progress. But progress did not erase everything. In her local supermarket, a woman whispered to her husband in the next aisle. That's the soldier who was in the news. Some looked at her as a heroine, others with judgment, as if she had stirred the cauldron too much. She didn't react. She simply kept walking. One Saturday morning, she met the woman in the medical uniform at the gas station. The woman introduced herself as Lucia. I just want you to know, said Lucia, you weren't alone that day. I saw it. I support you. Elena smiled for the first time in days. Thank you. That matters. Carlos visited the following week. They sat on the porch eating barbecue and watching the sun sink behind the trees. Did you do well? He said, biting into a rib. I didn't do anything special, she replied. Exactly. He nodded. That's what makes him powerful. She looked towards the street, calm and still, and finally allowed herself to breathe. But even with justice served, the weight of it all had not been completely lifted, because Elena knew this was not just about her. It never had been. It didn't end with the apology or the firings or the headlines. Those things came and went. But the conversation remained in quiet circles, in family kitchens, in training rooms where officers sat watching new videos and listening to new instructors telling them what they should have known from the beginning. For Elena, life returned to its rhythm. Weekends of training, work, errands, the usual. But something had changed. People treated her differently, some with a bit more caution, others with open admiration, a few with barely concealed resentment. She didn't take the time to categorize them. What mattered most arrived in the form of a single envelope that arrived 2 weeks later without a return address. Inside was a letter from a young woman named Daniela Vega, a 19-year-old girl who had just enlisted in the Army Reserve and had seen the video online. I didn't think I could do this, wrote Daniela. I always worried about how they would see me, if they would question me, if they would think I didn't belong. But I saw you calm, proud, strong, and I knew I could do it too. Thank you for wearing that uniform and not backing down. Elena held the letter for a long time. She never intended to inspire anyone. She just didn't want to be humiliated for no reason. But maybe that's what true strength looks like. Not a grand speech or a protest, but standing firm when someone is trying to erase you. With a single gesture, her story was not one of violence or heated arguments. It was about breaking the silence at the right moment with the right voice. That single phone call, calm, precise, and made under pressure, had changed everything. Carlos, always straightforward, summed it up better when they met again for lunch. You didn't panic. You didn't scream. You let them expose themselves. That's why they lost. Elena nodded. Yes, but they'll probably try it with someone else somewhere. Else, he said, putting down his fork. But the difference now is that people are watching. He was right. The gas station had new cameras. The police department now required additional training before officers could return to active patrol. Community liaisons met monthly with local, military representatives to discuss issues before they became news, and for her, she remained publicly silent, but never in private. She wrote letters to other service members who reached out. She spoke at small veterans events. She responded to every message from young recruits asking how to behave under pressure, but she also made time for herself. She started running again, went on road trips once more. She visited her godmother in Phoenix and cooked pozole for a group of kids who had never tried it before. Because surviving a moment like that doesn't mean you live in it forever. You heal, you grow, you move forward, and sometimes you hold the system accountable, not raising your voice, but refusing to be dismissed. For every person who said, "That's just the way things are," Elena silently responded. They don't have to be that way. Not if you know who to call. Not if you stand firm. Not if you remember who you are with or without the uniform. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of the importance of being seen, respected, and heard, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, talk about it, and most importantly, subscribe for more stories that matter, stories that remind us what true silent courage looks like. No,